And we are following the latest developments on the Potomac sewage crisis that's impacting thousands across our region. It's been more than a month since officials discovered that broken pipe that sent hundreds of millions of gallons of raw sewage into the Potomac River. And many of you at home have reached out about questions about this disaster, from the environmental impact to impact on our local economy and whether your water bills could increase amidst the repair costs. So joining us this morning to help bring you some answers is Sherry Lewis, a spokesperson for DC Water. Sherry, thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning. So let's just start off with where we stand today. Can you give us an update on the progress and repair of the Potomac Interceptor?
We really hit a critical milestone yesterday where we were able to finally get our eyes on that damaged section of the pipe. That's critical for us to be able to assess the damage and decide how we're going to move about repairing it. But that's a good sign. The interesting thing that people may not realize is it is a very manual process. We actually have people inside this pit where the damage occurred, and they are hand shoveling out the muck and the debris and everything that got into that pipe from the collapse. And then they're encountering these huge boulders. And when they find those, they've got to climb out. We have to bring in machinery that will bring those giant boulders out. And that's just what's in the open section. We haven't even gotten to that rock dam. That's a 30-foot long rock dam that's jammed in the pipe, and we have to remove that too.
This sounds like a lot of work and very labor intensive, right? So let's talk about in the meantime right now, because the sewage is being diverted around this broken piece of this pipe. So it's being diverted into this section of the C&O Canal. Can you kind of explain how this works for someone who might not know, so they know where the sewage is going?
Yeah, we have giant pumps. We have 13 of them that are on site. They're all working to pump that water into the C&O Canal, and they're using gravity. It's going down the C&O Canal. It's dammed on both ends, and then it goes back into the Potomac Interceptor further downstream of where the collapse occurred. We haven't had any overflows going into the river since Super Bowl Sunday on February 8th. So that's tremendous news. We can't eliminate all risk, but right now this has been contained for 11, going on 12 days now, and we haven't seen anything going into the river.
Okay, so let's talk about the testing here, because we've seen very high levels of E. coli in the river, other bacteria as well. So what kind of testing is being done right now, and is there a way for the public to be able to track that?
Okay, so we're releasing our water quality data every day when we get our results. And yes, we expect to see elevated levels right at that collapse site area, the channel where the wastewater entered the Potomac River. That's expected. But we're seeing encouraging news downstream where everything seems to be trending in the right direction. I know that the district, Virginia and Maryland, are all also doing their own monitoring, and they have their own advisories that are out, but we are releasing that information to the public every day, and it's trending in the right direction. But we do anticipate right there at the collapse site where most of that wastewater went in that direct area of the channel, you're going to see some elevated levels. Some of that is because of the snowmelt and the rain that we're seeing now as well, where there are maybe pockets of wastewater that were in that creek bed that had sort of settled and are now being picked up and brought out to the river through that channel as well.
So what can we expect here if we know long term? I mean, are you expecting a fish kill? We've seen those when bacteria levels are high in bodies of water, and algae overgrowth, anything like that. What are you expecting the long term implications here to be, or do we just not know yet?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is has hypotheticals right now. There's a lot of things that could happen. We're working and focused on the environmental restoration and remediation plan. We're developing that with our federal, state, and local partners to get a plan approved, but that will focus on the immediate area in that creek bed, in the C&O Canal, in the shoreline in the immediate area, and some ongoing water quality monitoring that we're doing right now.
Okay, so let's talk about something the CEO of DC Water, David Gaddis, said. He said this pipe was flagged to be repaired. He said it was a 3.5 out of 5 on this scale here, with 5 basically being an emergency and immediate repair is needed at the time. So can you kind of talk to me about this? Why wasn't this looked at sooner?
So this was inspected, and it was planned for rehabilitation. This summer, we had planned to have a 10,000 linear foot section of Potomac Interceptor in this area to start that rehabilitation. What we're doing now is after we get this emergency repair, so that's 4 to 6 weeks, we'll get that emergency repair done. That'll eliminate the need for the C&O Canal and that bypass. Everything will go back into the Potomac Interceptor. Then we're going to accelerate part of that rehabilitation plan for the summer, and we're going to go ahead and reline and rehabilitate more than 2,700 linear feet of the Potomac Interceptor in this area. So this was planned. We had inspected it. We knew that it needed to be rehabilitated, and it was planned for the summer, and it's unfortunate that this occurred before we were able to get to that.
So I know you talked a little bit about this there, but will this change for the future in years to come, the way you prioritize some of these repairs? You know, just looking at the disaster that happened here.
Yeah. DC, just like many other states and cities across this country, is dealing with an aging infrastructure issue. And we do have a $625 million planned 10-year rehabilitation project of the Potomac Interceptor that is actually underway. The interesting thing here is that you may not realize, or people may not understand, how complicated it is to repair this. When this pipe was built by the federal government back in the 1960s, it was built without any redundancy. There's nowhere to divert the wastewater. So when we do this work to rehabilitate, we actually have to do it while all that wastewater is still flowing through the pipes.
It has to go somewhere, basically.
Well, it stays in the pipe.
Right.
It stays in the pipe. So it's a very complicated process. You can't just go in and cut the water off and go in and replace sections or reline sections. It's a process that you have to do in smaller segments as the wastewater is actually flowing through there. It's really hard work, and I have to commend the workers who are out there 24/7 right now, monitoring this, keeping those pumps running, and physically down there in those pits digging out muck.
Yeah, this sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that, the total costs here. I mean, there's cleanup, the repairs you were just mentioning that will take a while, the environmental mitigation. So let's talk about the costs. What are the estimated cost totals here, and who's expected to pay for them? Because I know there's been a lot of back and forth between, you know, Maryland, Virginia, DC Water, and the federal government. So can you kind of talk to that a bit?
Yeah, so the cost is going to be borne by DC Water and its wholesale customers. So that would be Fairfax County, Loudoun County, WSSC, and it would be allocated based on the sort of funding formula that's established by our agreements. That could change if the federal government, you know, comes in and is able to assist and provide additional funding to help with those costs. We would welcome that. It's an important critical thing to be able to get repaired to protect the river, and so we would welcome, you know, any type of funding or assistance that we can get.
So let's talk a little bit about that there. The mayor, you know, she spoke and she also sent a letter to the president requesting 100% of the costs be covered. And now we're hearing that Maryland is also asking for some federal help as well. So what kind of coordination here does DC Water have with leaders in Maryland and Virginia? Is everyone kind of trying to work this out all together?
I will say this was a collaborative effort from the very beginning. When this first happened, we reached out to all of our federal, state, and local partners. They've been aware. We've been keeping them informed on a daily basis on what is happening, and it's a true partnership. They have been out on the site. We've had EPA, we've had FEMA, we've had DOEE, MDE. We've had all of our partners out there on the site, showing them the work that we're doing and working cooperatively with them throughout this entire process.
I know the mayor did request, you know, that 100% funding for this to be covered, all the costs here. Could DC customers see their bills, water customers see their bills go up if that, you know, depending on what happens here?
I think those are all things that are going to have to be determined as we move forward. DC Water has a number of large infrastructure projects that we're actually working on right now, including the Potomac River tunnel. And so we do have some fees that are associated with that for our DC Water customers. But that tunnel is also critical to protecting the Potomac River. It's a huge infrastructure project. We're in the process of building it now. Every year, more than 600 million gallons of combined sewers overflows go into the Potomac River. People may not realize that because we have a very old sewer system in the city that was built, some of it, you know, hundreds of years old. And so we're building this tunnel system that's going to capture all of those sewer overflows, or most of them, hold them, and then send them to Blue Plains when our capacity is able to allow it. And that's going to have a tremendous impact on the Potomac. So that's under construction right now as well.
Let's talk a little bit about accountability here. This happened, it's a huge problem. Is there any plan here to hold any contractors, engineers, or any oversight officials, anyone who's involved with inspecting these, this interceptor accountable for any of this? Is there any, idea of mismanagement here or, negligence contributed to this, or is there a plan to look at that?
Our first priority right now is to work on this emergency repair and get that done so that we can make sure that we eliminate those risks of overflows into the Potomac River, and to continue working on this long-term rehabilitation of the Potomac Interceptor, which handles wastewater for the entire region mostly. So that's our first priority. As to the rest of that, I think that's something that would have to be looked at later, but really our priority right now is focused on the immediate repair.
And just a quick last question here. Let's talk about these environmental impacts. I know we mentioned them earlier, and I know there's a lot of, mitigation being done. Or you're trying to get this cleaned up. We're coming into spring. We've talked about, cherry blossom, the season, the festival, all of that going on. What are kind of the steps to get this cleaned up, and how long could that take?
So I want everybody to understand that as far as the Cherry Blossom Festival, the 250th coming up, there isn't this massive issue into the district. If you look at the water quality data and the numbers that we're seeing, down into DC, this is quite far from the district waterways in areas of the Potomac. So, there have been people saying, "Oh, is it going to smell? Is it not?" There's no smell, there's no, issues as far as that's concerned in DC, right?
Because I know people in Montgomery County are smelling this, right?
So in the immediate area,
right.
Yes. We know that there's going to be odors. The alternative could be far worse. So, we are bringing in some, for those folks up by the collapsed site, we are working on some odor control measures, especially as we go into this longer term rehabilitation. But, I don't think people have anything to worry about as far as the smell or anything like that when it comes to the Cherry Blossom Festival. And then, of course, we would, certainly defer to our partners in DC who issue the advisories, and it would be up to them to, make decisions as far as water activity.
Right. That was, I came up with another question. As I said, that was going to be my last one, just about, some of the activities, the water activities, in that area. I know a lot of people, they canoe, they kayak. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about in Montgomery County, in that area where this happened. Are we still telling people stay out of the water until further notice, until we kind of get a better gauge of how things are and what this looks like?
I think you said it exactly right. That's what the district is doing. They're taking a very cautious approach and urging people out of an abundance of caution to avoid contact with water. But if you look at the numbers and you look at the data, it is all trending in the right direction right now in regards to the EPA acceptable levels. And it's really up to people to make their own individual decisions based on what that scientific data is showing us and based on the information that the health officials are providing. Ultimately, it's an individual decision based on the advice of the officials who would issue those advisories and looking at the actual numbers.
Yeah, I mean, this is, hundreds of millions of gallons of sewage, though. So yeah. It is going to be a process, right? I mean, to get this out of here, not out of here, but you know what I mean, to get this taken care of, to get this pipe fixed, for all of this to be all said and done.
But remember, we haven't had any overflows since February 8th. And even prior to that, we had had very, very little overflow. So there's not much that recently has gone into the river. And so as that goes downstream, it is sort of spreading out in the river and going downstream, right? When this happened, we know that even at the peak flow, when we had 40 million gallons of wastewater a day going into the Potomac, it accounted for basically 2% of the entire river's flow at the time. So that was at the highest point. We haven't seen that for weeks now.
So obviously moving in the right direction here. Just a quick reminder, you're also telling the public to not flush wipes, right? I mean, this has become a problem. Now, this was a secondary issue we saw after the issue with the Potomac Interceptor. So is that just something, not even the flushable ones, right? We're telling people not to do that?
Well, so there's a little bit of a misperception when it says flushable that people think it goes into the system and it dissolves. It doesn't. So this is a common issue in the wastewater industry, and we have issues with it down at our Blue Plains wastewater facility where ultimately these things go. And the issue here is when you have a 72-inch pipe, which is what this one was, it's 6 feet in diameter. So those wipes can generally get through there and get to our treatment facility where they have to get filtered out. When we were using these pumps are much smaller, maybe 1.5 feet in diameter. And
So
when
it
those
gets stuck in there.
they get stuck
Easily,
in there. They very easily get stuck in there. We have been doing rotating preventive maintenance on the site to try and make sure we're cleaning and maintaining, but they can just get suddenly clogged. But what we have done is brought in even more pumps, and these are pumps that are not easily accessible. They're not just sitting somewhere for us to get right here in the region, right? We had to go to Florida and Texas and Michigan to get the types of pumps that we need to do this work. But now we have enough pumping capacity on our site for more than 100 million gallons a day. That's well over the capacity in the Potomac Interceptor. So that gives us some additional redundancy if a pump goes down, and we'll have one that's able to jump in and sort of get that work done. So right now, that bypass pumping system is working as we've designed. We have additional capacity. We have improved the reliability of that, and hopefully, we'll get that repair done as soon as we can.
And how long are we expecting that to take, this repair in total?
We expect the repair to be done by mid-March.
Mid-March. All right. Thank you so much, Sherry Lewis with DC Water joining us this morning. Lots of questions here, a lot more to come. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, and we will continue to follow every angle of the story and how it's impacting our community here across the DMV. You'll find our updates on air, online, and streaming on WUSA 9+, including a half-hour special report that's streaming tonight at 6:30.